Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. And today with me, I have Dawn. You will hear the end of the education episode. You will hear Dawn and I talking about what subject we're talking about on the end of the education episode. I'm so sorry about that. But now from education to grief, believe it or not. And the reason why I brought Dawn on is because he has a podcast all about grief. And I don't know how he stays sane. When I was losing my mom 6 years ago, it will be 6 years in August 12th. She actually died on August 12th, started dying on August 11th, due to meningitis, was brought to the hospital due to a brain aneurysm, which we didn't discover until a week late. So the hospital gave her meningitis. But enough of me rambling on about why this subject is so important to Dawn and I. And so without further ado, I'm going to let Dawn take it away.
Thanks, Wynn. I appreciate it. And as you said, my name is Darwyn. My last name is Dave. So to answer the first question that might be on somebody's mind up there, you did in fact hear me correctly. I did say my name was Darwyn Dave. And back in April of 1978, April 24th to be exact, my father was murdered in a convenience store that was owned and operated by my parents. And that actually happened the day before their 14th wedding anniversary. And it was, I guess, more so a thing that bothered me most because he passed away literally about a half an hour after the last time that I saw him. So my mother would always take my father dinner, and we were sitting there in the store. He had just finished up, and we left. The alarm to the store went off, and we just happened to go to the store and respond to that alarm, and then found him lying on the floor dead of some gunshot wounds. And I really didn't know how to react to his death. I mean, I knew that he was gone, and I knew in the back of my mind that I would never see him again, at least physically alive, but I just really didn't know how to process that. So growing up and going through elementary school and more so high school, I just really struggled with his loss because I went to Catholic all-boys schools when I was in high school, and everything that we did was a father-son event, father-son bowling, father-son golf, father-son, you name it. If there were two things that, two guys could do together, there was a father-son event for that at my school. And eventually, sometime towards the end of my freshman year, I just sort of broke down and just really cried because I had really felt the weight of everything that had been building on me since I was 10 up until the point I was 14, and it was just a lot. So fast forward should be June or January of 2016. I had been looking at Facebook, and I had a couple of friends who had been personally expressing how they felt via Facebook about memories of their parents. One had a mother, but the one that really struck me was someone who had lost their father, and how she was so open about his loss and how that made her feel. And in my mind, I said, well, I've got a story too. I have been dealing with my father's loss now literally for 38 years, and it's just really time for me to tell my story, the fact that you can deal with loss, but in the end, you can also be okay. So while most people think of grief as something that is a sad thing, I have sort of learned to take that and make that into something that's positive, because after all, I still do have the memories of my father, and those are pleasant, happy memories. And I've always felt that as long as I have his memories, then he will always be alive. But my biggest message, specifically in my podcast, is that you may hurt today, you may hurt tomorrow, You may hurt, 1 or 2 days next year, who knows, but you still have to go on living. And then at the end of the day, you can still find joy in life and even happiness through the people that you've lost.
Yes, and I agree. I am lucky to have a soon-to-be stepmom and a soon-to-be stepsister. I am majorly lucky that someone else took on my baggage, and yet they went through a similar road that my dad and I did, and so it's nice that people understood. But I'm realizing, Dawn, and I don't think that a lot of people know this, but when a person first dies, people will surround you and say, how can I help you? How can I help you? 2 months later, a person may turn nasty and then walk away from you. I had that happen with my mom's sister. Unfortunately, she turned nasty on us and walked away from speaking to us. I had a close relationship with her. She was my godmother, and she still is, but she and I don't speak. So how can we as a community not walk away from those who are grieving?
Well, I have a couple of different philosophies, but the one thing that I think that everyone needs to realize is that everyone grieves differently. So even if you and I were siblings and we lost the same person, let's say either our mother or our father, we have to realize that the relationship that we had with that person, even though it was the same person, is different. So and I don't know if you have any siblings, but if you do, the relationship that you have with your parents, is just different. And it's not something that you can put a timetable on. So a lot of places may give you 3 to 5 days for bereavement leave. And all that simply means is that there's just enough time for you to attend a funeral maybe and put your loved ones in the ground via a burial or cremation, and then they're expecting you to be back at work. But that doesn't mean that you are still not missing your loved one. It doesn't mean that it's going to take a day, a week, a year. Everyone is different. And I think what needs to happen is the more that we talk about this and the more that we let people know exactly what we're going through, we just need to make sure that they can be a support system for us. Just because I may be able to get through my grief recovery process, I shouldn't say even get through, maybe because I can move a little bit more forward in my grief recovery process than other people, doesn't necessarily mean that they're moving at the same pace. And I think really in my family, I've been fortunate in the fact that my extended family has been very close and very supportive from the day that I lost my father. We have always been able to rally around each other when bad things happen. So I can say that I've been fortunate in the fact that people in my family have been understanding to both myself and my mother and have always been there to give us any type of support we needed. And even more so than that, even my friends, the people I grew up with, have never really treated me any differently, have always been there to listen whenever I've had some times that were rougher than others. And that's all I can really say is that I think that instead of expecting people to be over their grief or through their grief in a certain period of time, I think that we just need to be the support system that people need to help them get through the times that are roughest.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this bringing food is nice, but ask them what I can do for you. And my best advice to someone who's grieving, I've been there myself, Darwyn has been there himself, and just be a shoulder that they can literally cry on, or just be a person that listens to them and takes it all in, and then you can help them.
That's true. I found that the best friends that I have may not know exactly what to say to me in those time periods that I'm down.
Sure.
However, they are always willing to listen. And they'll tell me, well, I don't know what to say, or I don't have anything to say, or know how to respond to what you're saying. But, I'm here to listen to whatever it is you have to say. And like you said, a lot of times that is the biggest gift that I could receive. Now, for those people who have often asked me if there's anything that they could do for me, I simply ask them just to offer to do something for me. If there's something that you see that needs to be done, just simply offer to do that. So that could be coming by and doing yard work. That could be just making sure that maybe some chores around the house that you might see are slipping get done. Just simply make an offer to do something and just reach out and don't necessarily wait to be asked.
Don't necessarily wait to be asked,
Right.
and don't necessarily bring food by when the person is in bereavement. Don't, because they can't even think straight. Do something that they are unexpected.
But it's true. Yes. Like I said, even if you just show up to do whatever, it's always a great help, and it means a lot. At least it meant a lot to myself and my mother for people just to stop by, and whether it was bring a plate of food or, like I said, come by and help dust the house or help do yard work or whatever, because there's no emptier feeling in the world, and you said this earlier, there's no emptier feeling in the world from when you are at a funeral and you're looking at a church full of people, and 3 or 4 days later, it's just you and your family, and it almost feels like it's you against the world.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And my mom decided to be cremated, and still, she was taken from me by medical malpractice, as I said, and still the hospital hasn't admitted to the 11 families what happened. She went into the hospital with a brain aneurysm. 1 week late, she had a brain aneurysm. 1 week went past, she thought she had the really bad case of the flu. And when my dad took her out to the hospital the first time, our hospital isn't very skilled up here to override the patient, let's just put it that way. And so my mom said, no, I don't need a CAT scan. I don't need an MRI. And so they sent her home with a bag of fluid. And then her sister comes out, sees her eyes roll back in her head. They take her out to the hospital on July 12th. And she spent a month in the hospital. Turns out the brain aneurysm was a brain aneurysm, and it was perfectly fine, and it was caught and clotted. But turns out that hockey players came in with viral meningitis and gave it to 11 families on the ward, and the hospital still hasn't admitted what went on. So, yeah. So when I found out that my mom was dying, I basically rushed to her bedside to see her and kiss her goodbye, because I was 4 hours away from her. And my family walked into this room where we're doing this interview, which would be my bedroom, and said, your mom is very sick. We're going to Denver in the morning. And they walked into my room about midnight. And I said, what the hell are you doing here? Those are the exact words out of my mouth. And they basically said, your mom is very sick. We're going to Denver in the morning to see what's next. And yeah. And so I had to calm a woman down off of a intense medical situation because the doctors left her alone to die. And so 6 years later, there's not a day that goes by that I don't miss her. And what did you tell me, Dawn? What's the number for you? 32?
I'm sorry, say it again. I didn't hear the last part of your question.
What's the number of your father's death? The anniversary number is 32 years?
Oh, no, he has been deceased now for 39. It was 39 years
39.
on.
I'm sorry.
39.
Jeez.
Yeah.
39. So there's not a day goes by in those 39 years that Darwyn doesn't miss his dad, and there's not a day that goes by in my almost 6 years that I don't miss my mom.
That's true. Now, I got a question for you.
Even though we may not show it, on a daily basis,
right.
I still miss my mom.
Right. That's true. But you know what? And I want to, well, first of all, I have one other question for you. Were you able to actually say goodbye to your mom? Did you make it to her bedside before she passed away?
I believe, I raced down there. I raced away from Aspen to Denver, and she held on, even though she was in a medically induced coma. Geez, I know this is put a lump in my soul. She held on, even though she was in medically induced coma, I believe, for me. And
that's good.
Yeah, she held on for me. And when she came out of the brain aneurysm and surgery for after 4 hours or 5 hours of being under, she asked the family who was present, who's taking care of me due to I have a physical disability. So yes, I was able to say goodbye, although that's not easy watching someone die. You on the other hand, lucky you got lucky end of the stick on that one. You got to see gunshot wounds after that, and that still can't be easy. I mean, seeing someone shot is still not easy, or the after effects of seeing someone shot. And so, if you don't mind me asking, was the intended gunman trying to rob the store?
Yeah, they were. So,
yeah,
I'm gonna give you a scoop, and an exclusive one that nobody else has ever heard.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So, okay, as it turns out in the trial, the three men, there were actually three people that were involved in my father's murder. One person was driving what was to be the getaway car, and there were two people that went into the store that my father was in. The original intent of those three individuals that night was just to kill someone. It wasn't the intent necessarily to kill my father. However, the first place that they had gone, they said had too many people. So when they came across my father's store, my mother and myself had just left. So my father was in the store all by himself. So the intent was essentially to kill him under the auspices of committing a murder. So they would have had the opportunity to take all the money that was in the cash register. They could have taken anything else of value in the store, not that there was much else outside of maybe some food, but they had taken nothing. So one gentleman went to the back to sort of distract my father. The other gentleman asked for some cigarettes. And as the guy in the back approached the front of the store, when my father turned around to hand the guy the cigarettes and ask for the money, that's when they shot him.
Yeah. So they went to kill someone, but it wasn't necessarily your dad. He just landed up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Basically, yeah. That's exactly right.
Trying to make a means for his family. And my mom, now that I think about it, my mom landed up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because if she went to the hospital a week earlier, like she was supposed to, I think I would have a disabled mom to this day, and people know that by now because the lady on the earth didn't kill my mom. It was the meningitis. So
right.
basically, my mom landed up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And
right.
you would think that a gunshot wound or meningitis wouldn't be as harmful as they are. And yeah, but you would think that people would be smart about doing this, but they're not. So let's just say, why did you start a podcast? Were you trying to get over your own grief, or was it, I want to help other people through their grief?
It was the latter. I wanted to help other people. What I tell people, and it's sort of weird that people don't understand how, I guess now for the last 72, now 73, I just released an episode today. So for the last 73 weeks, I can be so open about my past and open about my feelings and open about grief. They think it's sort of like a morbid subject. But the fact of the matter is, we are all going to lose somebody. And it's the one thing that nobody wants to talk about. You know, if people have a bad breakup, they lose boyfriends, girlfriends, you'll lose a job. And people are so open talking about those things, and I don't understand why people don't want to talk about how they feel around the loss of their loved ones. You feel bad some days, and like I said, you can feel joy. And the whole point of my podcast is that when you lose someone, one, you have to continue living, but two, every day doesn't have to be a sad day. Just because I have a podcast about grief doesn't mean that I'm still sad and I'm not, well, I'll say this. I don't think I'll ever be over my father's death. I've come to the realization that he's not here and I have to keep living without him. But what I have to learn how to do is to manage the bad times, like the anniversary of my father's death. I think, as I mentioned before, my father was killed. He died the day before my parents' wedding anniversary. And that whole week for me is sort of weird because my father's birthday is April 14th. He died on April 24th, and my parents' wedding anniversary is on April 25th. So that whole middle part of April is a time where I really have to try to deal with what I'm feeling emotionally. So my whole podcast is that, you know, you might feel bad 1 or 2 days out of the month, but or even out of the year, but you can still be happy the rest of the time, and that sadness doesn't really define who you are, who you have to be.
Thank you. You said that so eloquently. Geez, have you been listening to my podcast? You stole my brain on this one because I still keep trying to explain. The pain won't go away. I may just not be sad on a daily basis, but I am sad on August 12th, and I will be sad on August 11th watching my mom die because all those memories will flood back, including the good ones. But thank you, Darwyn. You said that so eloquently.
Thank you. But like I said, I guess when it comes to losing someone, like I said, I have decided, out of all the, I guess, things that people will say that have been bad that have happened to me, is that, I'm just blessed to have come to a point where I can realize that there is joy on the other side of, well, there can possibly be joy on the other side of grief.
Yeah, there is joy on the other side of grief. And I apologize for the background noise. My lawnmower guy is here. See, this has been an interesting podcast day. Yeah. Despite technology issues and despite the lawnmower, we'll carry on. But as I was going to say to Dawn, where can people find you and where can people get a hold of your podcast? And then I want you to ask me a couple of questions that you've been interested in asking me.
Sure. First of all, the podcast can be reached at, my website is dealingwithmygrief.com. There will be links to the different places where you can get the podcast there. You can get the podcast directly from the website, or there are links to iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, any different ways you want to subscribe or listen to the podcast, you can get it there. If you want to know more about me personally or my story, I'm also trying to do some of the things that Wynn is doing in terms of interviewing people. If you want to share your story of loss, grief, recovery, you can send me an email at Darwyn, DARWYN, at dealingwithmygrief.com. And last but not least, you can also find me on Twitter at dealwithgrief. That is my handle.
And I would love to be an interviewee on your podcast because I think we share a fairly similar story, and we lost two loved ones years earlier than mine, but long place, long time. And so I appreciate the time today, but before I let you go, I want you to ask me a couple of questions about anything that you've been interested in asking me.
Okay, sure. The first question that I had for you, and I have listened to your podcast extensively, and one of the things I have been impressed with you is the fact that just because you have a disability, you don't let that, I'm not even going to say disability, just because you have cerebral palsy. I think that sometimes people think of disabilities as a negative thing. And one of the ways I try to spin that is that in some cases that just simply means that you have to find other ways to be able to do things. But how do you take your cerebral palsy and something that people might think is a negative and be able to see through that and to get through that and do some of the incredible things that you've done? I mean, you've written books, you're doing this podcast, you have been outspoken from some of the different episodes that I've heard you speak on in terms of outreach.
You think?
The whole cerebral palsy thing in terms of the outreach you're doing. How have you been able to do that in spite of having cerebral palsy?
Well, it's the way to bring this all around to the person that I lost. It's the way that I grew up. I grew up with not knowing that I had a disability. I didn't know I had a disability until I was in 7th grade. And again, when I was in high school, I researched my own disability. At the time, I didn't know I had a disability. So at the time, I really was gifted enough to be raised with able-bodied kids.
Okay.
And so I think that I see myself as an able-bodied woman with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy.
That's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. That's a good outlook.
I see myself as an able-bodied woman with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy.
That's good. I like that. That's a great answer. So last but not least, I do have one other question. I have heard from at least 2 or 3 other people that I should write a book. If I wrote a book on my experience in terms of grief and where I've come from 10 years old to now almost 50, would you read it? being someone who has written books herself, if I were a book, would you read that book?
Oh my God. I would be honored to read that book. Oh my God. If you wrote a book, I would be honored to have you back on the podcast. Not only read the book, but have you back on the podcast and promote the book, because writing a book is a form of grief therapy. That's how I got through my grief. I wrote my original book, I Come a Win, as I was grieving the loss of my mom.
Wow. I did not
yeah.
know.
And so, yeah, I used my grief to put pen to paper and write my original autobiography, and I wrote that when I was 23, almost 24 years old. And it's been out since she died in 2010, and it's been out, my original book has been out since 2012.
Okay, so you started that as soon as she passed away, you started writing your book.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I gotta read it then. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, as soon as she passed away, I started writing a book. And she actually gave me her blessing while she was mentally in coma to write the book.
Okay. I will definitely pick that up and read that then. That's great.
Yeah. So that's my answer to that.
Well, that's all I have. I do appreciate you having me on the podcast, Wynn, and thanks for this conversation, and thanks for answering my questions.
Well, I definitely appreciate you, and I think it needs to be open in conversation because, as we said during the podcast, people grieve in different ways, and it needs to be less taboo conversation than it is.
And it doesn't always have to be a sad conversation. I think that's the most important thing.
No, but it doesn't always have to be a sad conversation. And I appreciate your time, Dawn, and I hope that you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. And I will just keep doing the work I'm doing, Dawn. You do the same, and let's make these taboo conversations less taboo and make the world a better place. Thanks to you guys.
Thanks, Wynn. I appreciate it. Are we still recording? Hello?